Alright, welcome back to chapter 6. And we begin the chapter with first exporting the textures that we have. So in this chapter we're going to be doing a couple variations of our textures, so to get some different color variations for the armor. And we are going to be posing the character and then taking some screenshots, so setting everything up in Marmoset. So the first thing I like to do is have everything in Marmoset first. So we're going to go ahead and export all the textures. So what we want to do for this is export them as a target. So this is going to be a high resolution format that is pretty much used all over the game industry as far as exporting textures, and then those get compressed to go into the game engine. But those are kind of like the source file that you normally export. So I've already done it here, but export all four maps that we have. So the albedo, the emissive map, the normal map, and the combined occlusion, roughness, and metallic map. So I'm not going to redo that again, but there you go. So I've exported all those different maps. And now we're going to be going into Marmoset and importing the file that we have. So the first thing we want to do is make sure before we import that stuff that it is that you've split everything that you want it to be a different piece into that you've assigned it a different material. So it works in a very similar way as a Substance Painter. So everything that has a certain material attached to it, it will split it up once you import it in here. So if we expand the mesh here, as you can see here, I had 4 different materials. So I had one for the base body, had another one for which is this one? Okay, so there we go. So the Lambert here, they're not obviously named properly, but it doesn't really matter in this case because I only have 4. And so this is going to be the fake shadow over the eyes. I have the one called Blend, which is just the entire body. And then I have the transparency for the cornea and kind of like the wetness of the eye, and of course the eyeball. So there you go. I have 4 of them. And so the reason behind this is because we're going to have 4 different materials for the 4 different shaders for these, because obviously we don't want the transparent shader to be the same as the rest. This one's going to have, first of all, it's going to be transparent, and then it will also have very, very high glossiness and reflectivity. So that might not be the case for the other ones. So that's why we want to split them up depending, on your needs. So another good example might be if you want to have the skin be its own shader. So you might want to have a different split. So in this case, I have everything into as one mesh, as one piece. But yeah, you might want to split up the skin parts to have it to have its own shader. But so right now I am going to go ahead and kind of like just delete everything in here. So I'm going to keep the default one. So it tries its best, when you import this, it tries its best to maintain the materials that you exported with it. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. This one I'm going to call it body. And I'm going to get rid of all the other ones. Delete. So I'm going to assign this one so that I can delete the last one. Just going to do it this way so I make sure that I select everything. Alright, so yeah, whenever a material is assigned to a piece, you can't delete it. So that's why I was making sure that I assign this new one to everything so that I can get rid of all the extra materials we don't need, the extra shaders. Alright, so now we have a nice nice white character. So we don't want to stop here. So what we're going to be doing in here, it's going to be a fairly a typical kind of Unreal Engine setup. So I'm going to go ahead and add, we're going to go ahead and plug in the maps we already have in here. So the micro surface, is that what I have? Oh no, the surface here is the normal map. So we're going to plug that. So as you can see here, it's a little bit messed up, which is normal. So when you import it in here, you want to make sure that you flip the y-axis There we go. So yeah, flip this channel. So you invert this channel. So now it looks fine. There we go. So now our normal map is showing. Next, we'll import the gloss. So if we remember, in case you forget, you can always go back in here and look at the not this one, the oh yeah, actually, what each channel is. So what each channel represents. So the red channel is going to be, well, you want to hide everything above it for sure. So the red channel is always the occlusion, and then you have the green channel, which is the glossiness, and the blue channels, which is the metallic channel. So ambient occlusion, gloss, metallic. So if we go back in here into Marmoset, the gloss map is going to be, so we'll import the same one 3 times essentially. So microsurface, have reflectivity. So this is going to be changed to metalness. There we go. And we want the occlusion. There we go. So I'm going to plug the map again into the metalness one and then into the occlusion. And now it's just a matter of kind of organizing, which one gets what. So the occlusion map, that is the red channel. So this is fine. It's the first channel, red. Green channel is the gloss. So we're going to make sure that we select the green channel for this. Gloss here. And then the last one, the metallic, is the blue channel. Well, there's 2 more that are left. So the albedo. So we're going to plug that in right now. There we go. And the emissive. So we're going to make sure that we add that in. And then plug our emissive map. And there we go. So we have kind of like the base shader right now. So everything is in there, everything is plugged in. Now it's just a matter of kind of like fine-tuning things a little bit, making sure everything is correct, because right now it's not. So another thing that we want to make sure is to always invert the glossiness, which is this one. There we go. So now it displays properly. So now the shirt is has a very matte finish, and then the metallic pieces are very shiny, just the way it should be. So now we're good to go. All right. So as far as plugging things in, that's pretty much as far as I'm gonna go. And then we can play. You can always play with the emissive value here. Crank that up if you want. You can assign a color to it. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it white. And so now that we have kind of like, we'll get back to this, as we arrange kind of the camera and all the different kind of like the scene settings to make sure that we have exactly what we want. But for now, it's good enough. We have a good base. Now let's move on to the rest of the eyes. So as we can see here, we have kind of like the this piece here, the Lambert, which is the fake eyeshadow. So we're going to do that right now. So that you see, it's going to be on a white background. So the eyeball, so you'll see it pretty clearly. So for this, I'm going to add the same material to it to make sure. So I already added it, so it should be fine by default. And then what we want to do is add a transparency layer. So, not cut out. That's going to give, it's going to, give kind of like a really, really sharp edge. We don't want that. Instead, we want the ditter option. There we go. So you kind of get, up close, you get this noisy kind of gradient, but from a distance, it actually gives a really, really nice kind of like soft shadow over the eyeball, which is exactly what we wanted. So I'm gonna make sure in here to go the render settings of the scene, and I'm gonna crank up a couple things. So high-res shadows, I want to make that ambient occlusion. We want that too. Local reflections, so you can see what it does. It's a nice effect all over the body. Occlusion strength, so you can play with the occlusion levels here. how far it grabs and how strong it is. So yeah, it depends of your taste, of course. So you can have something that's really tight to get kind of like this fake outline look. Doesn't look that great in this case. So what I like to do is something it's not too far, not too strong, but that gives that adds a little bit of depth. So yeah, that looks good. Global illumination, of course. Every time you have all these options, if you can enable them, because it just looks a lot better. So it's a more realistic, it's a more realistic look, especially for the metals. So yeah, that looks pretty nice. And then yeah, everything else, as far as this, you can increase the occlusion details if your computer can run it. So this tends to slow down a little bit. So 4x probably too much. 2x looks good. All right, this stuff we don't need to worry about it. And yeah, there we go. So let's go ahead and create the transparency material. So what I'm going to do is select one of the presets here, Glass Simple. Drop that on here and see what we have. All right, so not bad, but not great. So it looks like she's tearing up. So we're going to tweak that a little bit to make it a little bit sharper. But there's a couple things here we don't need. So we don't need this. We don't need gloss. We don't need albedo. We don't need diffuse. We need this though. So what I'm going to change here is GGX to Blindfong. Actually, let's try GGX. See what that looks like. We're going to change the other one here to Blindfong. And we can reduce the occlusion, doesn't really matter. And then tighten this up here. So that's the gloss part we want to tighten up. So that's as small as possible. So in this case, the lights, the ambient lights is very diffuse, like the scene is just white all around. So it's catching up a lot more light than it should normally. We'll see, this will actually get toned down a lot when we add like lights in the scene and like a proper background. But yeah, for now, let's see. This is good. Transparency. So you can tone this down if you want. If it's still a little too intense. So it's just a hint. At the same time, it looks good over the cornea. So and crank it up just a little bit. There we go. And let's see. So what I'm trying to get rid of is kind of like the this part here. So in certain angles, it's going to be a little bit more obvious, but that should be subtle enough. All right, so we're gonna keep that, and well, now I'm just going to duplicate this again. Duplicate body eyeshadow. So it's going to be eyeballs. And we're going to drag that onto the eyeballs and adjust the glossiness a little bit. Not the glossiness, but the emissive. So we want this to not be too crazy, but we want a little bit of it. So a little bit of a tint to fake the SSS there. So looks pretty good. No need for transparency, so we can kill that. And yeah, for this, we'll want to tweak these things a little bit more here. So let's see. I'm gonna add a secondary reflection to this as well, so that I can crank this up. make it nice and glossy. Gorilla eyeball. And so looking here, you know, like you don't want it to be too clean. It's not a crystal ball. So just a little bit of a blur. That's starting to look pretty good. So there you go, some nice shiny eyeballs now. It's not perfect, but you know, we're not going for realism anyways. We just want something nice and stylized. So now with our glowy eyes, should look pretty cool when everything is, you know, with a darker background and some nicer render settings. So as you can see also in the low poly before I imported in here, I kind of, you know, moved the eyes to the side. So this is in preparation for posing. I just wanted to get that done right now. But yeah, the posing is going to be in ZBrush. But I just wanted to rotate the eyes in Maya real quick before. So there you go, that's why. And there we have it. So now let's tweak the scene. So, you know, this could be, you know, this could give us decent decent screenshots, or decent turntable, but we want to go a little bit, we want to tweak that a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of the presets here, and the presets are just different environments. So some of them are not going to work at all. Some will work really nice, some will work kind of so-so. So we're just gonna pick one that looks all right. So I mean, in theory, you know, if you made your model the correct way, it should work in all the different scenes. So it shouldn't be too bright, it shouldn't be too dark or anything like that. So, you know, like look at the image here, and like, would the character fit in there? Would it make sense? Yeah, you know, kind of. The lighting would match, the intensity of everything would match. So those darker environments, like this one here, this is a good one to adjust the emissive for the main, kind of like the body, and the eyeballs too. So the eyeballs now are like kind of glowing in the dark. So I'm gonna drop that. That's not too crazy. There we go. Something like this. And then the body itself also, I'm going to reduce the glow on that just a bit so that the skin doesn't look like it's glowing in the dark. 1.1. Nothing. So that looks dead, right? So that doesn't look good. You want to add just a little bit. So one is good. Gives a nice kind of like, yeah, it gives life back into the skin. So, but yeah, obviously we don't want this environment. We are going to try other ones. That one's not bad. It's always nicer when you have something that's high contrast. So it just makes for, you know, more interesting kind of screenshots, more striking. So the one we started with. This is not bad, but a little bit dark. But remember, you know, it's not that big of a deal if it's dark, or if it's too bright. We can always adjust things and add lights and things like that. What you want to get is just something that has like a nice environment for your character, something that works nicely with the colors. Yeah, I'm gonna go with this one here. So we're gonna go with the museum. So that should do it. As you can see here, it's already blurred a lot. So mode ambient sky, blurred sky. I really don't want the scene in the background, so I always select, you know, ambient sky. So that's a little bit more kind of like a neutral background. But we're going to drop the brightness for that. As you can see here, it doesn't actually drop the brightness for the character itself. So that will keep its its brightness even if it's complete black. So I'll go for something that's, you know, dark. And then you can just bring back sort of highlights and like had a nice rim lights with added lights. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. So very simple. Click and create a new light. So what I plan to do with this is, normally, you know, I go for a like 3, 4 to 5 lights per scene. The kind of the ones I like to use are, wait, hold on, we're not seeing the guide here. There we go. So the ones I like to use are Omni lights because I don't know, they're just cleaner. I don't like to see all this crap on here when I work. and they work great. So we're going to switch that to the light type to Omni. And you can think of Omni lights as just kind of like big spheres. And you know, when you crank up the brightness, it makes the sphere a lot more intense. And then the distance and attenuation curve. The distance is essentially the size of the sphere. So, you know, if the character is not anywhere near the sphere or is not within the sphere, it's not going to be lit. And then the attenuation is kind of just how, like, the fuzziness of it, like how it fades, how quickly it fades from light to dark. So, yeah, it's the kind of stuff, like, you play with it a little bit and you understand really quickly what it does. But initially, what I want to do is create the rim light. So right now, you know, the character is kind of the fabric, the shirt, it's not really popping. So what we want to do is make sure that this really stands out. So what I like to do is add 1 or 2 rim lights in the back. In this case, let's go for 2. So I'm going to start with this one here. So yeah, rim lights, always a little bit brighter. So something like this. Maybe a little bit higher. And then I'm going to create another one. Copy, paste. Oops. Copy, duplicate. And drag that on the other side. Maybe a little bit lower. So that doesn't look like it's too similar. But you can see like this. Now we get the arms. Yeah, it just looks a lot better now. The character pops a lot more. Doesn't get lost in the background. And of course, you know, you can't you can tint those lights. So I'm gonna try maybe like one side is a little bit bluer, perhaps. Crank up the intensity on that one. Maybe play with the distance so it only touches kind of like the top of the character, not the feet so much. Alright, so yeah, something like this. It looks pretty cool. Alright, so we are going to start with this and then create a new one. So this one I like it to be in front of the character to eliminate kind of like her torso. Excuse me. And Omni light again. Gonna bring that closer. And then the size of your lights, you know, the distance and all this stuff here, the brightness, the distance, attenuation curve. And this has to do with the size of your character. So if your character is really, really small, you know, when you export it out of Maya, or if it's really big, then those values might be different. So don't take the values as, you know, as for what they are. It's relative. So let's place this right here. So this is kind of like the main light source, right? So we want this to be kind of bright. But not too much in the front, otherwise it looks a little bit boring. It's kind of like not... We want to get some nice contrast on the character. Something like this maybe. And then I'll tint that a little. So this one I like kind of like a slightly purple, like violet, light violet color. Yeah, something like this. Alright, and then I'm gonna pop one more for the ground. So for the that's going to go right by her feet to fake kind of the you know, the main light source bouncing off of the ground and back onto her, kind of like a subtle bounce light, so that we can get some nice highlights on the boots. Because, you know, without this, it looks kind of dull, right? It doesn't, like, you don't see any kind of specular, any kind of material. So yeah, by bringing this in, we'll be able to get some nice highlights on here, so we can actually tell what those materials are and how shiny it is. There you go. So obviously, I don't want this to be too bright, so that it doesn't overpower the character. Because remember, the focal point, is around her face. So for this, I like to choose kind of like a brownish color. Like that, maybe. Try playing with the distance so that it's not so, doesn't go so too high on the character. And for this one, I like to have to turn the shadows off, because some things that I don't like is like this thing here, right? So having this shadow here, if it's a bounce light, normally it'll be like very diffuse, and you wouldn't get this harsh kind of shadow on the character. So we are going to remove that. Uncheck that thing. All right. So that works pretty well. It's subtle enough, but it helps. Okay, so there's two more that I want to add that are specific to this character. These little things here, her antennas. So I'm going to create a new light, a new Omni light once more, and kind of drag that right onto her antennas. Something like this. Because those are supposed to be shiny, so they should be emitting some sort of light. Pink, some nice pink lights. Alright. Let's see, crank this up. And I'm going to remove the shadows for this as well, because they're not going to go that far. I'm going to make sure that the distance is very short, so that we get maybe some highlights like on the shoulders, but that's about it, right? So on the head here, on the hair, and then on the shoulders a little bit, but that's it. So like, if it goes on here, that's probably a little bit too far. So I'm going to reduce that. Okay, so let's see. With, without, with, without. Alright. So it doesn't seem like it makes that big of a difference, but it's mostly if the character is next to something else, like next to a wall or next to another character, then those are going to be a lot more visible. So this time again, cast shadow. Okay. Alright, so now I'm pretty much done in terms of light. So, when we do the final shot, I might have an extra light in there that kind of rotates around the character, to record some cool videos. But yeah, as far as, light setup, that would be pretty good. So we can rotate the character to get different angles from those lights. Yeah, get a nice lot of variety there. So if we get some different dramatic shots with like some really harsh lights on one side and not much on the other side. So this allows us to do a lot of cool, take a lot of cool screenshots. So I am going to rotate her back into position, and then you notice here those lights didn't move with it. So what you can do is take those two lights here and then drag them into the mesh folder, so that when you rotate the mesh folder, then the lights move along with it, but the others don't. Alright, so we're going to save this, and I am going to hide the guides because I am done with this. So now all I have is a character in the scene, looking pretty cool. And the last bit before I move on to doing some variations for the character, actually we're going to do one variation. So to change her outfit, to give her a different look. And we'll see how easy that is with the setup that we have. But before that, let's check out the render settings. No, the camera, the main camera settings. So this is where you do kind of like all the final tweaks, as I said, and a couple of things that I want to pay attention to. So a lot of this I'm not going to touch, at least not yet. A couple of things that I like are strength. So this, like how, not strength, but the sharpen strength. As you can see here, it just sharpens everything. So you don't want to go too high with this, but high enough that you get, you get kind of like those details on the metal, a little bit crisper. So it's a fine balance, so don't overdo it, otherwise it looks a little bit weird, like on the face right now it's a little bit too crazy. And you can see it also sharpens kind of like the shadow. So yeah, it's, don't go too harsh on this, but a little bit definitely adds. All right, and oh, there's a limit too that you can play with. So you can get some really cool styles with this, like a lot more stylized than you had before. So this is a little too crazy, but I'm gonna drop the strength. So I like this. This, this reads really well. It's really crisp. You can see all the details. And yeah, it's not overkill, at least in my opinion. All right, let's go back here. Another one that I like is Bloom. So Bloom is really cool, and you can see it you can see it really clearly at the top of the head here. If you look here, while I crank this up, so it just adds a little bit of a light bounce, like a and especially if you have like some really bright lights, that makes a lot of sense to have that. And when you have some things that are really shiny, like those super glossy kind of like gem things, when they catch, when the camera catches them in a certain angle, they kind of like glitter like this. So it looks really cool. Like if it's static, if it's a static image, you're not gonna really see it ever. But when we do the turntables, when this thing rotates, and like you see the kind of like the little things like glittering like this, like on the belt here, and some it has a really cool effect. So again, not too crazy, but a little bit. It looks pretty cool. And grain, not a fan, so always take this off if there is any. And then tone mapping, we're not going to do anything. So contrast, all this stuff, it should be good the way it is. You can always do the final tweaks in Photoshop. Like I prefer not to touch this too much. And let's see, lens. So we can have depth of field if you want. Some to get some like really close-up shots of her nose or something. But if you do close-up shots, those are always really cool to have. There you go. Now if I were to do it like a portrait, you get this nice blur. It really, I don't know, it's a really striking image. It's a lot better than just this, where like a lot of the details up close don't really read that well, especially the hair here, like on the sides it looks a little bit funky, but when you add this, now it's like, oh, cool. But yeah, for now, no, not needed. But we might add this a little bit later. And let's see, flare is the kind of like the other one that's like, it's cool a little bit to do when you do turntables. Again, it's something that will catch the light in certain angles. So you can see here it's a little bit crazy, like it's just camera, kind of like lens effects. Sometimes, if it's subtle, it can be cool. Right now it's too much, but so that seems reasonable. So we can keep that. So very low setting. And then you have another one that I like is chromatic aberration here. So I'm going to crank it up a lot so that you can see what it does. But yeah, you get the kind of like the channels that are shifting, and you get these red outlines, blue outlines, green outlines. So you don't want to go too crazy with this, but it does add a a cool look if you have it very subtle, especially if you have like some really bright lights. You know, going from really bright to really dark, to fake kind of like that misalignment of channels. Looks cool. But for now, we're gonna be tweaking. We're gonna create like the variation. So I don't want to activate that just yet, but we'll get back to this later. And that's pretty much it. So limits, yeah, I'm not gonna touch that. That's pretty much it. So now, you know, we cranked up. We added a little bit of bloom, and we cranked up the sharpness a little bit more. So we're ready to go now. So let's go back into Photoshop and then start working on the color variation. Before that though, I'm going to duplicate this character. So move this on the side here. So we have two characters, and this one I'll call variation 1. And she also is going to have her own shader, because she's gonna have her own textures. So body variation 1. Whoa. There we go. So I'm gonna apply that right away. So now we are ready to go. So I'm gonna save this, and we're going to go inside of Photoshop. All right, here we go. So this is actually going to be pretty simple. So we have a really nice setup here to be able to do, you know, many variations really quickly, and you'll see that in a moment. So what I want to do, I'm only going to be playing with the diffuse. So, you know, the emissive, the normal, all this stuff is going to stay the same. You know, with variations, you can go really crazy. So if I wanted to, I could have, you know, maybe like her new shirt has like patterns or like, you know, different things on it. And then in this case, we're going to keep it fairly simple. It's just kind of to show the potential for this. But we're going to be tweaking the colors. So we're going to come up with an entirely new kind of color theme for her. And yeah, so first things first, we're going to go ahead and duplicate this and create kind of like its own group. So, you know, for each new variation, you want to have kind of like a group for it, so that it's easy to you know, hide and show. And we're going to call that variation 1. All right, and yeah, so as far as the tool, I'm going to use kind of like just selections, and we're lucky here because we have all our selections already done. So if I want to change the hair, so we're going to start with the hair, for example. Let's see, where is it? Right here. So you control click on the mask, and then it selects your hair, and then all you have to do is well, you can just do like a color balance. So control B to bring up the color balance tab, or do something like control U to be able to change the hue. So I'm going to start with this, and let's go for, yeah, kind of like cold, a cold blue, kind of like a purple blue for her hair. So you start with this, and I'm going to go into color balance, tweak the kind of like the darker colors here, so that it's not green, because that looks a little bit weird. So we're going to bring a little bit more magenta in this, balance it out. All right, looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit more brightness. So a lot of this is trial and error, and like preferably, you know, for your color variations, you wouldn't be winging it, kind of like what I'm doing right now. So, you know, if you're working on an actual game, you'll have the concept artist, you know, probably you'll probably have, or she'll probably have different color variations for you already. Or you can always kind of just go back in here, take a screenshot real quick, and then, you know, bring that into Photoshop, and then just play around, you know, like just paint over it, try to see like what color combination is gonna work best. But yeah, what I'm about to show you is really kind of very similar to, it's not exactly that, but it's very similar to a lot of what the different games, different studios use. So for example, on Heroes of the Storm, we used to do something similar, you know, that's to get the different color variations for it. Yeah, this is how it's done. So you create the first one and then variations from there, and it's actually really quick to do. So I'm gonna keep the hair like this. So we're gonna go with this, and the process is, I don't know if you notice right away, but in this character, I consider that I have kind of like two main colors for the theme and then two accent colors, if you want to call them that. So the two main colors would be the pink and the black. So that's kind of like my theme. You know, if you look at it really, really quickly, that's kind of what pops the most. So pink and black. And then the accent color would be the purple here. So the purple bits, you know, all the purple gems, and the turquoise that you can find on the legs, and then some of the highlights here on the shoulder blades. But those would be the accent colors. So what I try to do here is always try to keep those four colors. And you know, I say four, I mean, you can have more accent colors, you can have more main colors. It really depends on your taste. But I think like this normally tends to read well. It doesn't look, it's not too messy. It's not like too full of colors. It's not like it's not like a rainbow. And once you go in here, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of manage your process. So yeah, initially I always start by tweaking the two main colors. So that's the hair, like I did right now, and I'm gonna tweak the fabric, which is the other main color. So I'm gonna go in here again, Control click. What is this bit? Oh, so I'm gonna select, yeah, all of that. So all the fabric, and I'm gonna go for a maybe a warmer blue for this. Yeah, let's try that. So in this case, you know, when I really have a not much value to work with. So if I were to do a color balance, you know, it wouldn't look that great because it'd be really, really dark. And if I were to do a Control U, change the hue, then again it'd be very, very, very subtle. So that's not gonna work too great in this case. So I'm just gonna go ahead and create a new gradient map. So the gradient map, it will have to be pretty tight. You know, we'll have to move all the sliders here on the side to be able to get any kind of cool results, but it works much better to do something like this. So I'm gonna start and play with this. So yeah, this process is a lot of trial and errors, and like I said, in my case, like I'm kind of winging it. But if you approach it by, you know, with the two main colors, the two accent colors, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of imagine what the other what your new variation is going to look like, because you're just thinking of like four colors. So let's see what we can do with this. So I said blue, so we're going to change that to a darker blue. So to make this one different, I want to go with like a much more vivid shirt color. So something that's a lot brighter, but not quite the same color as the hair, so that it's not kind of like boring to look at. Doesn't look like monochrome, but those two colors tend to look pretty nice together. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm gonna add another one in between here, so you can see it's really, really tight, but all the range of values is in kind of like this area here, so that's why you have to do that. It's a little bit more limited, but with gradient maps, you can do anything. Delete the dark, don't need that. Well, let's try that. So we'll go with that, and of course we can always come back and tweak it further. So, you know, it's a first pass. It's not going to be that great. and we're only going to be tweaking the four colors that I talked about. So all the trims, all the smaller details. We're not going to worry about that just yet, but we will come back to it. But yeah, initially, just want to make sure that you have a cool kind of main theme, and then fine tune. So I'm going to change her skin color too, because why not? So I'm gonna make her a lot more pale. So that she looks a little bit more like an elf. So I'm gonna reduce the saturation. Maybe go towards blue a little bit. All right, we'll try that. And so I don't know if you see where I'm going with this, but I'm going with a blue and yellows. So my accent's gonna be something like oranges, and the blue, the main color is going to be, I'm not sure yet. And the main colors don't have to stay the same. So it doesn't have, the main color doesn't have to be on the hair, and then the second main color doesn't have to be on the fabric, and it can vary from character to character, even if the same, if it's the same thing. So for the second variant, what I'm thinking is that one of the main colors is going to be blue, and that blue is going to be pretty dominant. So it's going to be the hair and the shirt, and then I'll find somewhere else to put the other main color. It doesn't have to match one to one. And actually, it's better if you mix it up a little bit, so that it doesn't look like you just shifted colors very simply and then called it done. It just makes the color variation much more different, which is good. All right, back in Photoshop. So I'm going to tweak the shoulders, and then we're going to try to bring that, to save that and see what it looks like. So armor, control click that. So the armor, let's see what we can do with that. So this one was pretty muted before, so a color that didn't pop really because it was pretty dark. So maybe we can make that pop a lot more in this case. So I'll try something safe for now, and we'll see. So I'll go with like purple. All right, so it's a lot of blues. Let me change the gems real quick. So for these, I'm gonna go yellow or red. Oh, red, that's cool. All right, let's try that. We'll see what it looks like. Probably not gonna look that great the first time around, but it'll give us a good idea. And Targa, I'll be the one. There we go. Already made. All right, body variation 1. Let's import that in. Okay, so well, we still need some work, obviously, but there are some things that I like in this. So. And by doing this really quickly, you don't waste time like fine tuning something, and then when you import it in here, you're like, that doesn't look good. Literally didn't spend more than a couple minutes, so not that big of a deal. It's kind of like sketching, you just little bit by little, and then you refine as you go. There's a couple things in here that I like. So I like the contrast between the face and the hair. The blue hair, purple, like violet hair looks pretty nice. I like the blue shirt too. Now it's a little bit too uniform, so I'll want to have maybe a little bit more brightness up top here, but yeah, that definitely works. And I like this color too. So All right, so I'm gonna go with I'm gonna try having kind of like white shoulder pads to make them stand out a little bit more. So maybe that's gonna be my secondary color, my secondary main color. We'll see what that looks like. Armor. There we go. So we're gonna go a lot brighter for this. Drop down the saturation. Change the hue to something a little bit more yellow. Oh, that looks good. Alright, maybe make it a little bit brighter. So it's gonna be kind of like the ice the ice version. Alright, so some of those gems, they don't, the color. This one here looks pretty cool. This one here works too. This color, not that great. This color, not that great. This one needs some work. But I like the orange. And so we're gonna go with a similar color for the knee pads here. So we're gonna try kind of like yellow instead of turquoise. So let's see where those are. Turquoise, there we go. Control U, push that towards yellow. Yellow. Make that a little bit brighter. Not too sure about this, but we'll try it and we'll see. All right, and then I'm gonna be tweaking the gems a little bit more here. So I'm gonna create a new layer, set to overlay. Ooh. To line this up so it's not as saturated. Yeah, that's pretty good. So it's fun, like you can definitely paint over things if you want. Like I said, I could add like a crazy pattern on our shirts, like I don't know, like like snowflakes or whatever it is. I'm not gonna do that, but I will select the fabric again. Excuse me. And make kind of like the top a little bit more like this color here, so a little bit of a paler, lighter blue. Whoa. Unselect this bit. Okay. Well. Only one way to know if this works. I'm gonna save this out and see. Whoa, okay. So I definitely like the top. The top half looks really cool to me. So the white, the orange, the purple, this blue here. So that works. The bottom here, nope. The yellow has got to go for sure. So what I'm gonna do is keep kind of like the theme that I have going on for the top here, and try to apply that throughout the bottom as well. And then maybe maybe the color is going to be kind of like, maybe the boots here are going to be a little bit darker. Maybe I'll go for black. Keep the white on knee pads. And yeah, everything else kind of like the big part here. Turn that black instead, with perhaps black leggings as well. Yeah, all right. So I like this. Her face is a little bit dead right now. Obviously, when you kill the saturation, that's what tends to happen. But we can bring that back. We can bring a little bit more like pink tones in here. But yeah, as far as the colors go, like I really like this here, like the top here. That's a nice variation, and it's pretty different from the original too. It's good. All right, so back in here. So the knee pad is going to be black instead now. So having a nice splash of color there didn't work out. It didn't look good. So we're gonna get that out of there. Okay, so maybe something like this. And I said the leggings, so I'm gonna tweak the leggings as well. And here. So I wanna unselect everything else. And I'm going to make this black. Let's see. Yes. Oh well, I'm just gonna get rid of that then. There we go. Shift that over to a warmer tone. So let's try with this. So this should be a lot more subtle. So now we want the turquoise here to be the same as the white that we have on the shoulders. So I'm gonna try that. Remove saturation. Push it a little bit more towards the blue. Like this, and then crank up. Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to try was to tweak the skin color and make it a little bit more pink to bring life back a little, just like that. Yeah, that's a lot better. All right, so let's go ahead and save that and see where we're at. If we can move on. All right, I like this. So I said we're not gonna tweak the emissive, but I lied. Obviously we're gonna tweak it because right now it turns to purple here, and it kind of messes up the color of the gems as well. We want those to be a nice bright red orange. So we will be tweaking that as well. But yeah, so for now, I mean, there's obviously like a couple tweaks here on the legs that I want to do as well, and change the boots, and all the trims are still the same color, so we'll want to change those as well. But as far as the kind of like the main theme for the character, I'm pretty much there. So I really like what I see here. That's a very different kind of color. The read is very different as well, but it still reads nicely. Yeah, I like this. So this is going to be the theme that we go with. And now let's go back in Photoshop and tweak the details a lot more, and fine tune all those little trims and those smaller details, and see what we can get. Alright, so in ZBrush now, make sure to import your model. So in this case, there's a couple things that we could do with this. So I am going to show you how to deform the model using a Z-Sphere rig. So this is going to be the most, it's going to be very quick first, and it's also going to give you the most flexibility if you want to, create different poses, basically. There is another way that I will also show, because ZBrush does not, at least ZBrush Core, does not allow rigging like this. So if you have ZBrush Core, you're gonna be kind of stuck. So I'll show you another way to do it as well. Not completely, but just kind of like an example, and you can you can take it from there. It's pretty simple. But first things first, we don't want to be deforming this when we can have some nice textures on it. So, and actually, the texture is going to help with the alternative version quite a bit. And actually, in any case, because it just helps to have to see the textures and how to deform, right? So, first things first, we're going to go in here and select flat color. So we don't want any shading on this. And we're going to load up a texture and import one of the texture that we have already. So let's go ahead and import this one. Actually, targas I don't think are supported in ZBrush, so we're going to save this as something else. Let's save it as it's a good old JPEG. Yeah, sure, that will do. Alright, let's try this again. Yeah, because it didn't import anything so far. So let's try to import this. There we go. So now I'm going to go in here in our texture map. And load it up. Alright, so obviously it doesn't look that great, but no problem. We just gotta tweak the way the UVs are kind of applied onto the model. So let's see. So if we go in the UV map here and we flip kind of the coordinates, so not this one, there we go. So flip the V coordinates, and now we have something that looks a little bit more that we can work with, right? So of course, we're not gonna get any of the transparency or any of the material, any of the materials that we had, in the in Marmoset Viewer. It's just the diffuse, but it'll give us something very nice to work with. So we'll have a much better glimpse at the final results. And so the first method I want to show is the alternative version. So, and then we'll go in and do the full rig. So the first version I was talking about is, let's see, we're gonna do let's do the hand. So for this, you want to make sure that you have the the mask, and I like to have the lasso tool for this, so that you can select things. And then of course you could use symmetry for this, but for most poses symmetry doesn't work that well, so I'm not gonna select that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make a selection for this. So tweak her hand as if she was gonna hold something. Like, she doesn't have a weapon now, but this is especially great if you want to do like small modifications. And we'll actually do this towards the end for the fingers and all this stuff, even after having done the full rig using Z-spheres. All right, so let's see. So the hand's a little bit close there to the the little flap here on her skirt. So hopefully we don't see that too much, but Might have to adjust a couple things. Alright, so I'm gonna smooth this out. Oh yeah, it's definitely showing there. Alright, so anyways, I'm gonna try it this way and see what happens. So I'm gonna just draw a kind of like a temporary bone, place it where the you know, the real bone should be. So something like this. Then I'm gonna try and rotate this. So that would be kind of like the you know, the process. So as you can see here, around the rotation point, it is not perfect by any means, but it's not so bad. And then from there, what you can do is, well, of course, tweak this here. So we're gonna go and soften this out, clear the mask, and do like a soften on this to bring it back, because it's only one vert, so it's easy to put back in place. Alright, so the hands is mostly good. Yeah. Now I just need to push this back. So of course, you know, if you have a mesh that has nothing like this where things are closed, or another thing that you can do also is use different subtools for this. So instead of having, you know, only one mesh like I have right now, you can split everything in different subtools and then kind of like move those separately after that. So you move kind of like the body first, and then you would use your different like deformations to move the skirt next, and then the shoulder pads next, and things like that. So if you don't want to have to deal with, you know, this kind of stuff. But yeah, so, and then from here you can move the individual verts to fix any issues. So showing the topology always helps. Alright. So there we go. So now we got the shape back, and our hand is separate. So that's the only problem with this is that it's pretty destructive. So like whenever you move something, you have to undo it to get back to what it was before. And another way, if you don't want to have to go back in here and do a bunch of undos, you know, to get back to your original pose, you can always create a new layer. So you just pop a new layer like this, and then whatever modification you create after that. So let's say I want to, you know, rotate the hand or something. Like this, invert your selection. Oops. There you go. And if I move this, clear the mask, and then you can see here, if I stop the record, I can get back to the original position. So you can have one original position for your, you know, for your body at the very beginning, and then you can always, you know, always get it back this way. So yeah, so this method here is actually very good. Like, you don't need a rig if your character just needs to be holding something like a shield or a sword or weapon or whatever it is, because, you know, those modifications are actually really quick to do. Right now they're not that great, but you can go back in here and again kind of like move the individual verts to get back a shape that looks a little bit better. I'm gonna keep on recording this, and you can soften things out, smooth things out until you get a nice bend. and if the form, you know, the deformation, let's say like on the elbow, is not that great, well, you can always move those verts manually to get back, you know, like a nicer silhouette. So that's kind of like the quick way to do it. Or if you don't have ZBrush, the full version of ZBrush, or if you just don't want to do a rig for your character, you can always do it this way. And with a little bit of patience and a little bit of work, actually gets you can actually get some really nice results this way. But what I'm going to be doing here is none of that. So let's undo all the stuff. So the way to do this, very simple. First things first, we go in here, tool, and select Z-Sphere. So from here, we have the rigging tab here, and we can select mesh. So we're going to select our low poly. There we go. So now we have it in transparency, like a ghost form. So what I like to do for this is select transparency and remove the ghosting so that I can see the textures. And yeah, so from here, let's scale this down. So there's no right way to do a rig. It's a lot of trial and error, and it really depends on your mesh. So in this case, you know, since I have a lot of stuff going on with this girl, actually I'm going to go with the flat colors because I'll be able to see this a little bit better. It's not as dark. So yeah, so for this, you know, especially if you have a lot of flaps and things like this, like things hanging, the rig will be a little bit, it will look a little bit messy, and you'll have to spend a little bit more time, you know, compared to something that's a lot more like simple, just a character without any clothes. But yeah, you should be able to you know, to see kind of like the process. And as I said, it's a lot of trial and error, but it's pretty straightforward the way this works. So I want to make sure that I have my symmetry on because, you know, the character herself is symmetrical, and I want the rig to be symmetrical. So yeah, so there we go. Let's move the sphere here in the center. And from there, we're gonna draw the legs. So all you have to do is like flip between draw mode and move mode in this case, you know, to create the rig. So I'm gonna go in draw mode and kind of draw those out and move them in position, just like this. You know, of course, you know, the rig is not gonna be perfect the first time around, and we'll be moving things after this, so it's fine, you know. And it helps if your brush size is smaller, so you don't grab all the bones at the same time when you're moving things. Something like this. So the ring that I'm going to be making is initially very simple, and then we'll tweak it and add some stuff as needed. So, you know, this one is just kind of like the base, super basic version. I'm gonna move the knees in the right spots, the hips. All right, so, you know, for the legs, this is a good start. And we'll get back to it anyways. So let's keep moving on. So going back here, I'm gonna move this back a little bit. Then we're gonna create the shoulder joints. Move those into place, and then elbows, wrists, and hand. So for the hand, we could do the fingers, and we might. We'll just have to see. how things deform first. But for now, we'll keep it simple, and like just like this. All right, so let's move this back in place because it's all over now. Okay, and one more thing that we need to do before we move on is make sure that all this here is set to 0. 1 density, 0 Dynamesh, so that when we go into our preview mode, the character doesn't change. Because otherwise it's going to Dynamesh it, and we won't be able to export any of that stuff. So make sure that the adaptive skin is all the way is set to 0, so no Dynamesh whatsoever. And yeah, so we can go back in here. Get out of preview mode and keep working on this. So now we're going to create the neck. Nope, not like that. There we go. Created 2. Nope. Struggling a little bit with this one to make only a single. I'm gonna scale this up so that's a little bit easier. There we go. Okay, so that would be kind of like a basic, super basic rig, right? So I always start with something like this. That works, that deforms most things pretty well, and then you add on top of that. So obviously, I want things for these things like her earrings, for her hair, her ponytail, all the different like clothing pieces here that are kind of like on their own, so that I can deform them properly. But for now, for the sake of just checking it out and seeing what we have so far, since this is going to be it'll be a very iterative process, so we'll have to try to move it around, see what works, what doesn't work, and then go back to the rig, tweak the rig, and then go back again and see if it's working out or not, and then back and forth this way until the rig is actually to our liking. But for now, let's see the process. So I have a rig right now, and all I want to do is click bind mesh. And now, if I move anything on here, the mesh will move with it. Magic! Woo! So there's a couple things here to keep in mind. So there's 2 modes to move things around. So you can move the little spheres themselves. You can move the Z spheres. But as you can see here, this stretches things out, and you can lose kind of like the proportions. So when it comes to selecting the spheres, I like to stick to rotate. So this is more like a fine-tuning thing. So you can see here, to rotate the arm a little bit. And of course, right now my rig is all over the place, so it's not giving me the best results. But like rotation like this. So that is going to be what those spheres are for. But if you want to go to the move tool here, instead of clicking on the spheres themselves, click in between to select the bones, and it'll select kind of like the entire chain. So the higher you click in the hierarchy. So I have to think of this whole thing here as a kind of like a hierarchy, right? So the first sphere in the chain, the top one here, and then all the other ones that are kind of like spawning from this one will move as well. So if I select this one here, like way up in the chain, then the feet's gonna move as well, as you can see. Oops, if I select the bone. So that's pretty cool because it allows you to create like really big movements, and then you can go from here and kind of like tweak the different parts of that chain further, like this. And then of course right now I have symmetry on, so both legs are moving at the same time. You can remove symmetry and be able to move only this one, like this. So yeah, I mean, as you can see, it's really cool. Like you get some really easy rig this way, and then yeah. So from there, since obviously this is not working that great, and we can always go back and click this button again, and it will unbind everything and kind of like reset the whole thing, reset the mesh, and reset the rig to what it was before, and then we can keep on adding things. So there's a couple things that I like to add. So we just go back in draw mode, and then you can just click anywhere on the actual rig, and we're gonna create those kind of like those buffer areas. And what this does is it adds more. It makes it so that there's less stretching in this area, and it just gives much better result when you're about to bend the arm. So I can actually do a before and after, so you can see exactly what I mean. So right now, if we bind this again, and I try to rotate the arm, oops, go in move mode. If I try to rotate, to rotate this here, you can see here you get kind of like this like this really soft deformation with the arm, which doesn't look good. But if we unbind this and then add those extra spheres, make sure to bring back symmetry, and add those extra spheres, in below and above the joint, and then we try to bind again and deform it this way, we'll see what happens. So as you can see here, it's a lot tighter, right? We don't get this weird like the entire arm's not moving, and gives much better results. And then you can fine tune kind of like the elbow, how this behaves. So it just gives a lot more control. So I'm going to do the same with all the different joints, and we'll try it from there. So I'm going to add some more here. Maybe that's good. Another one for the wrists. You can try adding only one and see how that looks, since it does make it a lot easier to deform things this way. Alright, so for this, I'm gonna pop a new one here. For the hips, I am also going to add an extra bone right in the middle there. Oh, make sure we remove. So I screwed up now. I was adding bones with the skin on. So always make sure to disable that first. Alright, we'll add those back. This, like this. Another one here. Another one here for the knee. Another one here for the heel. Probably. Yeah, something like this. And then I'm gonna add another one for this little thing here, so to make sure that this stays, the way it is, it doesn't deform, because it's a rigid part. So I'm gonna click on here and create a new bone. For this stuff here. So I'm not gonna be, touching this much. It's just so that when things deform, there's going to be a lot more weight attached to this part here, so it's not gonna deform. It would if I were to move these things around, but I'm not, so it should give a pretty good result. All right. Okay. Move these down and these up a little. So again, if I want the shoulders to stay rigid, when everything else starts moving, I want to add extra bones here, to the same way I did with this this little thing here. So let's add a couple more for her spine so that she can deform better. Shrink those down. This. So with the skeleton, you always try to, with the rig, you always try to kind of mimic the real skeleton as much as possible, so that when you deform things, it's it deforms as expected, just like a real skeleton would do. And then yeah, for this, I'll probably add some ribs to make sure that to keep this shape here, the silhouette, when like her torso moves like one side or the other, or if it twists or something like that. It will also help with the arms here, so that when she raises her arms, we don't get this here, like the side of the breast, don't raise as well. Don't get pulled by those bones here. Alright, so let's see. I'm going to start from here. And I'm gonna move those back. And then have them circle. Like this. Almost like real ribs. Wrapping the body. So whenever you have something like this, that something that's hard, that's supposed to be like a solid piece that you don't want it to deform too much, it's best that you add these here. Trying to like contour that particular shape so that yeah, it doesn't deform too much. I'm gonna add some more spawning from this. Okay. Alright, so before I try to lift our arms, I'm going to add some for her skirt. So this is obviously a work in progress, right? It's not anywhere near done, but I'm gonna add a couple bones to her skirt so that when I raise her arms, the fingers don't grab part of it. This is the first skirt bone. Goes all the way down. Alright, and from the same bone here, alright, well, I'll get back to the front one later. I'm just gonna check first if this makes any sense at all before I move on. So we're gonna go move, and we're gonna try to actually rotate, and we're gonna select this centerpiece here. Try to rotate that and see what happens. Alright, so as you can see here, the the armor itself deforms really well because there's a bunch of bones there, kind of like making sure that it stays tight. So that part of the torso is a great success. Now we'll add, obviously, we'll probably want to add a couple things here for the the belt so that it doesn't stretch too much. And of course, add fingers, because right now this finger is getting dragged by this bone here on the skirt. But if we add stuff in the fingers, it should be good. Shouldn't be influenced. So that's good to know. Next, let's see these things here. How those deform. Okay, so those can lift pretty good. It doesn't look like it's dragging any of the skin underneath. See this one here. So this one here obviously deforms way too much right now, so we'll have bones for those flaps here, her wings, and then we'll have extra ones for the her butt cheeks, so that they don't get dragged along when we move this up, because that doesn't make much sense. And let's see. So if we raise those arms, let's see what happens underneath here. So yeah, the deformation here, under the armpit, is actually really good. So you can see ZBrush is doing a really, really good job as weighting those things, weighting the mesh properly there. So the shoulder pads still need some work, but like the armpit area, I mean, I could probably add an extra joint here to make sure that this goes back up a little bit more. But as far as the sides here, like the torso stays in shape really, really nicely. So yeah, so far so good. Same with these. Let's see. So yeah, we don't have those here for the hips are getting deformed a little bit. I don't think that's that big of a deal, because I'm probably not gonna deform that too much. But it's good to know. I could probably add an extra bone in here, or maybe an extra one on the leg, so that it doesn't stretch along with the flap on the skirt. Let's see what else. Alright, so the knee area deforms pretty well. this thing here is acting a little bit crazy now, but it's maintaining its shape. For the most part, at least. So in this case, what I want to do is actually rotate this so that I don't influence any of this here. So yeah, you can see this deforms really nicely. There's probably going to be some stretching here on the knee area, but you can always fix those. I mean, the flaps here, the flap here, the little armor part on the side, very nice. So I'm quite happy with this. As far as the legs go, I think that's as far as I'll take them, because they're pretty simple anyways. If I want to adjust, I can just tweak the mesh itself. But yeah, so for the rest, things that we need to do still. So add a couple extra bones for the skirt here. Add some extra bones for the flaps in the back. Add some for the fingers. And then, of course, add a couple extra ones for the head, the hair, the antennas. And yeah, we should be good to go. So let's get back to it. We can just unbind everything. It'll get back to what it was before. And now we can keep on adding bones. Alright, so I'm pretty much done with the rig. It looks like a mess, and it kind of is, but that's what you get when you have only one subtool, one mesh to work with. So, obviously if I had, if this was split, or if I was just deforming kind of like the main body and using, like the different plugins to move the rest of the objects, I wouldn't have to have such a complicated rig. But at the same time, I don't like how I don't have any control when I do it the other way around. So this way I have full control. So whatever I move, everything has kind of like a bone attached to it. So it's actually a little bit more like a real rig, right? Where you would have a bunch of different controls on top of your regular kind of like skeleton to be able to move all the different pieces of your character. So it looks messy, but most of these bones I'm not actually going to touch. So they're just there to kind of to influence the skinning and to make sure that things deform properly, without stretching too much. So yeah, there you go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start posing this thing. So once you're happy with how things deform, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but when it deforms, nice enough, and then it's time to pose. So it's best when you're about to pose something if you have references for it for your final pose, especially if it's going to be something pretty dynamic. In my case, what I want to do here is to have her kind of like float, like be floating in the air like she's flying. So it's going to be a pretty relaxed pose. Like her legs are going to be just hanging there. So there's not going to be much work on the legs. There's not going to be any kind of crazy deformation there. So it should be pretty straightforward. And then for the hands and like the torso, I'll probably like twist it a little bit, give it a little bit of dynamism, like she's like floating in the air, kind of like turning around a little bit at the same time. So all in all, a pretty simple pose that I'm going for. So I'm not going to be using any kind of reference material for the pose itself. But if you're not super comfortable with this kind of stuff, like if you can't really see what the pose might look like from a simple T pose, yeah, look at references, right? So there's a bunch of you can look at different drawings, different Google images to reference a nice pose and try to copy it as much as possible. So when we move things around here with the rig, there's two different modes essentially that I'll be using throughout the whole process. There's the move mode and then the rotate mode. So when you move things around, obviously you don't want to grab, or at least for the most part, you don't want to grab the spheres themselves. Like you don't want to grab the joints themselves, the ball, the Z spheres, because when you do, it doesn't maintain the length. So you can actually stretch the limbs. So if you do like cartoon stuff, go crazy with this. But if you want to maintain kind of like the same volumes, to go for something a little bit more realistic in terms of deformation, you'll want to use the rotate instead. So you click on one of the Z sphere, and then you click on the rest of the limb, and then you can kind of like rotate from that Z sphere, and that will rotate everything down the chain the same. So the way to do this is that you use rotate mode to deform kind of like to get kind of like the base silhouette, kind of like the base pose, and then you can go in and add like use the move tool to fine tune the position. So the difference with the move tool is that the move tool, you'll want to click on the chain like I'm doing right now. So you can click on you can always use both interchangeably. You can always use both, is what I'm trying to say. But when you do the move tool, as you can see here, like it tends to deform things down the chain a little bit at the same time. So it's not as clean as using the rotate tool, for example. But the move tool is pretty great to get to fine tune things. But just be aware that it will affect kind of like the rest of the chain. Like here you can see here, if I rotate, it rotates. It starts from the bone that I'm clicking, and then it rotates everything. Like it locks everything else, and then rotate it from that point. Yeah, if you use the move tool instead, kind of like the arm of the form as well. So it's a little bit more of an organic kind of like deformation if you use the move tool. It's a little bit cleaner if you use the rotate tool. So it's just, just play with it. Those are kind of like the two modes that you'll use throughout. So get used to both and like play around with it, play around with your rig, and you should get a pretty quick grasp as to how these things deform and what works best in your particular scenario. So one thing also that I found that helps to kind of like do the posing is to show the poly groups, right? So like you can see here, it gives me a bunch of different colors, but at least now I know where the bones start and where they end. So that's a lot better than working off of a kind of like just everything being the same color. So yeah, I really recommend that you enable a poly group showing like this when the time comes to rig things. So I mean, the rest of the process is going to be just me like moving things around and trying to see like if it looks good or not. So I'll let it play because it's going to be a little bit boring. It's not going to be much to say about it, but I'll pick it up once I'm happy with the kind of like the pose that I achieve. And from here, I mean, it shouldn't look much different than what I have right now. So it'll be just kind of like fine tuning here and there, like different things, maybe giving her a little bit more of a twist, raising her arms a little bit more. And of course, like playing with the antennas, kind of like the wings, giving them breaking the symmetry essentially is what you want to do. Try to make this as dynamic as possible, and then whenever there's symmetry, it by default really doesn't look dynamic. So yeah, just break the symmetry, break kind of like anything looking too robotic. Make her spine kind of like curve as much as possible, and yeah, should be good to go. So I'll pick it up a little bit later. See you then. this. So I'm happy with the pose. You know, it's not perfect, but it'll do. It'll be it'll add a little bit of dynamism to the screenshots, and yeah. So I'm getting a little bit of like weird deformations here. That's just because my rig is not the best. But overall, most of the volumes are keeping their respective shapes. So yeah, that's gonna do it. So now what do we do? So there's going to be a little bit of editing left still in ZBrush, to fix things like this, like clipping here. So we can easily fix that right inside of ZBrush. But first things first, what I want to do is extract this, because right now this is just a rig with a skin attached to it. So the skin is just there for visibility, but I can't actually do anything with this. So I can't move the verts on their own. So what I want to do is go here in adaptive skin, in the menu, and then you have to make sure that you don't have any Dynamesh resolution here, 0, density of 1, and then you click make adaptive skin. So this will create a new mesh, this one here. So there we go, we have a new subtool, and this you can actually export because the other one, if we go back here and where's our rig? Yeah, there we go. If we try to export this, actually that would work too. Anyways, so I'm going to work off of this here because there's no rig attached to it, and I can actually like tweak this out, and yeah, we'll go from there. So the first thing I want to do with this, we can actually get rid of the texture, so I'm gonna bring back kind of like a regular material and go into my texture, and we have to remember also that we flipped the V axis here, so we want to flip that again before we export anything. And then we can go in texture map and just select the texture off, and then do our final tweaks on here. So what I like to do initially is to split this into a bunch of different pieces. It's going to be a little bit easier to move things back in place, because right now if I were to select kind of like the move brush and try to move this, well, I'll move the whole thing, so obviously I don't want that. And so I am going to go in polygroup, do auto group. There we go. So now it's split in a bunch of different groups, and yeah, so from there I can actually split things out, or in my case here I'm just gonna go ahead and do a group split on everything. So that's just gonna be a little bit simpler. Then of course we'll bring everything back together after that. But yeah, for now let's go and move things around to get rid of all that clipping that we got. So this shouldn't be too much of it, just a little bit that I've noticed here and there. And you can see here like the way it stretches is a little bit weird. Like right now we have kind of like this nice smooth curve. Here we'll have to push those verts back down a little bit. And then to select one vert at a time instead of selecting a bunch, you just go down to brush size 1, and then you can move individual verts. Just like that. Alright, so that's a little bit more like this. So of course, the normal map is not going to behave perfectly on this, because some of the things, like some of the surfaces, changed a little bit when we moved this, when we did the rig, but it shouldn't be noticeable enough. So yeah, we'll just kind of like tolerate this much. So the shoulders, a little bit deformed here, so I'm just trying to give it that original silhouette a little bit more. Straighten this out. When you do this this step, it's good to have kind of like your reference mesh, the one that's not deformed next to it. If you don't remember exactly, kind of like what it looked like before. In my case, I have a pretty good idea of what it used to be or what it should be. So doing just this should be good enough. Move this down. All right. That shoulder should work well enough. This one here again is a little bit curved, so we'll have to tweak that. Bring this down, push this up. And pull these verts out a little bit more. Alright. Alright, this shouldn't be too bad at all. For the shoulders at least. So I'll probably want to push this out a little bit more. Like that. So it would have been a good idea to not have the eyeballs in here, so that the eyeballs wouldn't deform. I think they didn't deform much. Maybe a little bit. But yeah, worst case we can always adjust this. Push these in a little. Just like that. Problem solved. Right. Now, around the knee, there's also a little bit of weird deformation there. Just want to line this up. Like that. Alright, this should be good enough. The back here, back looks pretty good, considering. Just gonna bring that clip out to hide kind of like the mess underneath, where all the verts are clipping. Alright, it should look pretty good. This got deformed too. Just gonna push this out. That's a little bit straighter. Doesn't have to be perfect again. With the textures and everything on it, we're not gonna notice these things too much. But we're just trying to avoid kind of like any texture stretching, because that we would probably see. Alright, the rest of the legs is good. So the back area here, so yeah, some weird stuff happened there. Just want to make sure that we pull those verts out back in place. Trying to get back to like a normal shape. Again, like this is going to be hidden for the most part, so we don't really care that much, but just trying to get some like normal curves back in here. There's a little bit of clipping. I'll push this, pull this out. So all these loops are kind of like inverted. Instead of being in, they're pushed out. So I'm going to push these back in where they belong. Out of saving. Alright. You can probably hear the click, click, click. I'm using my mouse because I can't find my pen. In this case, you know, it doesn't require that much dexterity, so the mouse is fine, but that would be why. It's not by choice. I've just misplaced it. Why is the other stuff not hiding? Oh, there we go. Solo mode. Yeah, here you can see there's a couple like deformations that are not quite right. So I just want to move this back into place. Okay, so it's starting to look a little bit better already. I just want to fix those verts here that I can't really see. Click soften on this to reveal them. And then we're going to put them back in place. Like that. Alright, so that should be good enough for this. The body looks pretty good now. There's no like major clipping happening anywhere. No like weird deformation. Maybe up here, like This is a little bit compressed. We're going to try to pull this down. Make this pointy like it should be. And all right. So we can see from the top here, there's some weird stuff going on. Again, a lot of this is covered by the hair, so it really doesn't matter too much. But it's an easy fix, so might as well. Alright, so the body's good enough. I'm happy with this. This should make for good good screenshots. So let's bring everything back. See what else needs work. Where else is there clipping? So there's clipping on the hands here. I'm gonna push this in so we don't see it. Let's push this in. Much better. The side. Okay. All right, now that all the little issues have been ironed out, at least for the most part, let's go ahead and bring that inside of Maya and reassign kind of like the proper materials, because right now this is just one OBJ, and then if we import that back into Marmoset right now, we're not going to get any of the kind of like the shadow, the eyes, and the transparency on all this stuff, all these good little details that we added. So I'm gonna make sure that first we reassign those materials properly, and then we will re-import inside of Marmoset to see what this whole thing looks like. So yeah, now we have a bunch of different subtools. So we're going to make sure to merge all of those. And so I'm not sure, as you can see, you have the new ZBrush version been updated, but I'm not sure if this was in before. I've never noticed this, and it's really annoying. Maybe it was before, maybe it was there before, I don't know. But the UV part here, so when we merge things, we want to make sure that we select the UVs here. Otherwise, it's gonna wipe the UVs, you know, as we collapse things down. So obviously, we don't want that. So yeah, make sure this is selected, and then we can start merging down. And there we go. Now I am going to export this mesh here, so we're going to call it, well, it's actually right there then, full low posed. Let's save that. Oops. Huh? Okay. Now we are going to open up Maya, bring the character in, posed UVs, there we go. So this one here. Whoa. Well, that's not quite right, isn't it? Ah, there we go. So I'm forgetting a couple pieces there. That would explain it. So I'm gonna merge that down too. There we go. New mistake. All right, re-export. get rid of this and import the right one. Alright, now we're talking. Okay, so first things I want to do is just merge all this stuff so that I can do a soften edge on all of these. We don't want the faceted version, we want the smooth version. There we go. And now I'm gonna split up those materials as we remember. So the transparency, split that, merge it, and then we're going to assign a blend to it. The eyeballs now are supposed to have their own material, so I'm going to split those out, merge them, and assign a new material. There we go. And then same thing with the last part here, the shadows. So same thing, extract, assign a new material. Alright, so now we should be good to go. I'm going to merge this back together and then export. So I'm going to export it on top of itself. And now we should be good to go to bring this inside of Marmoset. Alright, so let's see what we have. Import model. Alright, so I'm going to make sure to move this on the side. Kind of adjust the rotation a bit. Tilt her forward a little bit more so that she looks like she's flying. Alright, something like this. And yeah, let's see. So I'm going to assign the blue version to her. Oh no! Oh, we forgot something important. We forgot to flip the UVs in here. So no big deal. We can do that inside of Maya. So we're going to bring up the UV editor. And we want to flip the V channel. So as you can see here, everything is upside down. The head is upside down, so it's not good. So we'll flip that. Boing. Alright, and now we should be good to go. Hopefully everything still lines up. I'm gonna paste that on top of it. There we go. So now everything is working. And yeah, so ta-ta! There you have it, character in a new pose. So it looks pretty cool. So as you can see, it didn't take that long. The posing itself is probably the thing that takes the longest, but creating the rig is pretty simple. And then if you want to go for a like a simpler pose, then it would take even less time. Alright, so I'm just gonna make sure to assign all the different materials to this properly. So let's see, glass for the transparency, and then eyeshadow. Alright, I'm gonna clean up the scene, so get rid of all the materials we don't need. Keep this nice and tidy. And yeah, so there we go. So now we'll be ready to take some cool screenshots. And actually, there's one more thing that I want to show you, and that I've actually done already, and it has to do with playing with the timeline here down here. So what I've done here is I've placed one of the lights. So the last light 2, this one here, the one that was in front, I've placed it onto a turntable. So to do this, I'm actually just gonna undo that, and we'll see how easily we can do this. So I'm gonna take the mesh out of here, and then I'm gonna create a new turntable for that mesh. And then first of all, I'm going to bring the mesh back to where it was. So position 0. And now I'm going to actually move the turntable itself on the side here so that it can turn, she can turn on her own. Alright, so, and I did kind of like the same thing for each of these characters, like the same as I did right now. So I took all the meshes and assigned a turntable to them. so that they can all turn individually. And then the turntable is pretty cool. Like you just have to, you assign a turntable. You can click the sync loop speed here. If you're getting some like popping at the end of the rotation, but by default it should work, just like this. So this should be what you get. As you can see here, I've just assigned a turntable to her. Just move the turntable, like the group of turntable on the side a little bit, and then she's rotating on her own. There we go. So with this, we can record, we can capture the videos here, and then of course you can play with different things with this. So as I said, I am going to create a turntable for this light here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new turntable and then drag that light to underneath so that this turntable here, now if we rotate it, it rotates the light. And then one thing that I did with this light for the turntable to work is an Omni light doesn't really work this well in this case. So I changed it to, and we'll look at it. Show guys, there we go. So I changed it into a directional light instead. So now now I can rotate properly. And then of course, if we don't want, we can adjust the speed of all these things, so we can make the light, the light turn twice as fast, or like all the characters turn into different at different times. Or we can just go in here and select the turntable for these guys and disable them, so that when we press play, the only thing that rotates is the light. And then this is how you take screenshots. So we can, you can play with this here, adjust kind of like to get a cool lighting, and then you can add more lights onto different turntables. You can do all sorts of things. So it's really, really cool. And then once, if you want to do record a video for the turntable, make sure to hide the guides, because we don't want to see all this crap around it. We can hide, these two here. And we'll do a turntable for her right there. So very simple. When here, capture video, and then get set the quality to maximum. Why not? The resolution, and then just hit export, and it'll play the loop. And there we go. So I'll do that onto my desktop. Call it test. Save. And it's exporting the video. All right, render's done. Let's check it out. There we go. So it's as easy as that. And this is a perfect loop too, so you can you can always have it loop forever, and it'll keep going. And then yeah, that's one render example. But yeah, you can have some for for the different. You can make your characters rotate. You can have the different like light setups rotate. The possibilities are endless, and it's really up to you at this point, to create some cool screenshots. Like I said, there's one thing that I think is pretty cool that we can do with things like this, is to add a little bit of depth of field. So select the camera, bring this up so we can see, and then we go distortion. No, oh yeah, distortion. So add a little bit of chromatic aberration to get kind of like the little red highlight at the top here. And then the focus, we can adjust the depth of field. So obviously right now it's a little bit too intense, but can tweak kind of like the focus. You get some really, really cool shots this way. And then of course, you can adjust kind of like the near blur, how much it blurs it. A little bit, maybe the the far blur starts a little bit later. Up to you, but yeah, there you go. And then you can have a bunch of close-up like this. You can create like some different camera animations. You know, just like you can have the turntables, you can create also different animations for the camera. So let's say I'm gonna create another one. And as you can see, it's the camera that's actually rotating around the models. It's not the models themselves rotating. So you can have, you know, a camera on a turntable, and then of course, you know, you can set kind of like you can set the center just like we did before. And of course, if we can have the camera on a turntable, we can also do some really cool like translations. And then with this, you know, we can have different keyframes. So we can set it so that it goes from top to bottom. So make sure that you select, you know, exactly what you want. So transform X. All right, select the Y, the good one. There we go. Set this at the beginning, create a key for it, select the last key, and then drag all the way down, and then key it again, and then, woo! And then we can have a nice pan like this, a nice soft pan. And then that in itself is not that great, but if we go in here and we enable the turntable, and then maybe the turntable for the light as well. Now we can start to get some pretty cool stuff. So I'm gonna hide this. I'm gonna hit play. Oops. And see what happens. There we go. So then if you render a video this way, you know, it gives you kind of like a nice a really cool showcase of your model. And of course, you know, I just did this in like a couple seconds, so it can be a lot better. You can have some really nice shots, and then like maybe like limit it in like certain position. You can also have like the depth of field activated for this, so that it only shows, you know, something like this. Let's see. And then another cool thing is that you can actually adjust, you know, all these things here, you can assign a key to it. So you can have it, you know, focus differently as the animation goes on, as the time goes on. So yeah, there's a lot of really, really cool stuff that you can do here, you know, with Marmoset. It's just a matter of you figuring out kind of like what you want to do, and yeah, trying new things. And this is how I create a bunch of stuff for my portfolio whenever I have to take screenshots, and it's always given me like really, really good results. And the best part is that it's super simple, as you can see. All right, so this wraps it up. So, you know, as far as taking screenshots, you can always go in here and kind of like capture an image, you know, and you can set the different you can set the settings first, so you can you know, have this be much higher if you want, so really, really high res, to get like a really, really nice 4K screenshot. And then all you have to do is, you know, click image. There you go. Or you can capture it to clipboard. Now open Photoshop, and then you can paste it right in there, and then start editing it. For example, create new, paste, and there we go. So it's as simple as that. So, you know, have a screenshot, and then you can do any kind of post effect if you want. Normally, I tend to do pretty much everything in Marmoset, so it always looks really nice already. You might want to add some, like, I don't know, like vignette, maybe something like this. Let's see. Lens correction. A little bit of vignette. To help focus the eyes on the character. Boom, boom. And then there you go. You have a screenshot. And yeah, just create a bunch like this, all around the character, maybe a couple of videos, and you'll have a pretty kick-ass portfolio in no time. All right, this wraps up this chapter, and next up we'll move on to chapter 7. I'll see you then.